Hi, I'm Penny and I live in Mount Lofty. It's a little piece of paradise on the Toowoomba Escarpment in southeast Queensland. As you can see behind me, it's beautiful, lush and green. But in 2019, it wasn't like that. It was tinder dry. This whole escarpment was just a load of dry forest waiting to go up in flames. The conditions made all of us here in Mount Lofty extremely scared. So we organised a community forum, the Toowoomba Escarpment Bushfire Forum. At the forum we had Lee Johnson, a former Queensland Fire Commissioner.
If we have seasons ongoing year after year in the coming future, it's going to be very difficult. I had a saying when I was the Commissioner. We found it very difficult to get people's attention in Queensland about bushfire unless there was smoke in the air. And part of the reason is it's not been our number one natural hazard. Severe weather have been. But the 2019 and the 2018 fire seasons in Queensland were genuinely unprecedented. Queensland has never lost 50 homes in a fire season. But the fundamental issue for the escarpment in itself, who owns the land? The person who owns the land owns the fire risk. Okay? And that's been the law and the unwritten law in Queensland. And I'm here to tell you, if you live on the escarpment and you've got extreme fire weather and catastrophic fire weather in your area with fire, get the hell out of there.
After the forum, we managed to get funding for a Toowoomba Escarpment bushfire preparation project. We interviewed interesting and expert people for that project. We spoke with USQ academic Barbara Ryan, and she shared the results of a survey across our community about bushfire knowledge and preparation.
The second area that we looked at was preparation for leaving. So this was quite devastating because 94% of people told us that they were just going to leave, that was their plan, and yet hardly anyone had done anything towards preparing to leave. So triggers for leaving were even more disappointing. Smoke and flames. If they could see smoke and flames, that's when they were going to leave, when we know that that is the worst time to leave.
Council has a really important role to play when it comes to bushfire. So Heath Martin, Council's town planner, updated us on what's happening with the planning scheme.
What controls do we need to put in place to regulate future development to make sure that those risks are appropriately considered and addressed? That may involve changing the zoning of land in some areas. The current zoning may support types of development that are inappropriate within a bushfire risk area, so we might make some changes there, and then in the future when somebody makes an application to do development within a bushfire risk area, there'll be some clear requirements that they will need to address to make sure that they are reducing the risk to a tolerable level. So we want to make sure, as I said, that people and property are not placed at risk by new development.
Our interview with Nathan Willis from the Queensland Parks and Wildlife Service was really interesting. He shared the operations that they're doing and the initiatives that they're undertaking on bushfire risk.
Everyone got the SMEAC briefing in front of them there. The latest is weather today is supposed to get to 17 degrees. We've got relative humidity down to 38%, and we've got winds less than 10 km an hour from the west. So that's sort of been, the last 2 days, it's been a westerly, west-northwest sort of location, so I'm pretty confident we're going to have that for the next 2 days.
We also spoke with ANU academic Marta Yebra, who shared the results of satellite data that showed the moisture content of this escarpment in 2019 and 2021.
For example, this is as per today, but if we go to 2019, earlier in the fire season, we can see the big difference on the moisture content conditions. So all red basically, and we have pretty much the whole area had few moisture content values under 50% and below. Huge difference in terms of the dryness of the landscape in 2019 and now.
One interview that really shook me up was the one with Chris Norris. Chris is a lifestyle landholder in the Peachy area and was very seriously affected by the Peachy Ravensbourne fire in 2019.
Our property would be 3 to 4 k's from the Ravensbourne National Park to the east. In 2019, the climate was very dry. Bushfire was something that was being talked about, the possibility of bushfire, and sure enough it did happen. We had a bushfire that was started on a neighbouring property to the southwest of us, an absentee owner, and that's where the bushfire started. The Peachy grape tree bushfire started. With various wind changes and things, it made its way down to the Ravensbourne National Park and severely damaged our property and some of our neighbouring properties as well. The fire came from the southwest. It jumped the containment line that was in place into the pine forest and ran away down the roadside verge to the east. Our property was totally burnt apart from our house and our shed, which were saved. The trees behind me, they were all blackened and burnt right to the top of the knoll that you can see on the other side of the valley. It was pretty devastating to see the impact of fire, having never really experienced it before. The fire that burnt a significant portion of our neighbouring property and their neighbours as well. That was heading towards Crow's Nest, but that fire was contained by work with the water bombing and the rural fireys that were in place. They managed to hold it from going too much further. When the fire approached from the southwest, it was mid-afternoon. It had jumped the containment lines that the command centre next door had in place, and it came roaring down. It was a 30 metre, 40 metre wall of flame. I've never seen or experienced anything like it in my life. The sound was deafening. I was quite determined to stay with the property and make sure that I could do my best to save the house, but I soon changed my mind. My wife and I took off. The fire would have been 80 metres, 100 metres from our house. When we left the property, when we left the house, I was of the feeling, or we both were, that we'd never see, the house was gone. Because of our experience with local rural fire brigade, we had an evacuation plan in place. Between us, we knew exactly where we were going and how we were going to exit the property. Basically, we managed to get out the driveway just in time. If we'd stayed another 10 minutes, it would have been a different story altogether. As we were leaving, a rural fire team were coming down the driveway with a grader and a small fire truck, and they managed to grade a containment line directly around the house, which was a grader width wide. We travelled out of the property, driving our vehicles, made our way down Grape Tree Road to the north, and we stood and watched the fire coming down to the house. The sight of watching the fire approach our house was devastating. We lost sight of it after a while with a massive amount of smoke. I've never seen a firewall that big in my life. It was just a wall of flame coming down that from the southwest. Absolutely terrifying.
Mount Lofty resident Shane Egan told us what he learned on fire management at a recent rural workshop north of Toowoomba. We're also grateful to Wayne Walterspool, Superintendent of the Rural Fire Service. He told us about the initiatives that they're taking and how they're working with local residents.
The Toowoomba Escarpment does present a fairly major risk to the communities living along that escarpment. It's quite a big area that we're looking at here, and there's a lot of bushland down below. And people living in those areas want to live in the bush for obviously the views and the lifestyle that they've got there. Living in these areas will present to you some risks, and the biggest risk there is bushfire. There's a lot of activities going on with people managing the land that they're on to reduce that impact of bushfire on communities. And that goes across the board for everywhere, not just along the escarpment area. But we recognise that. We've seen some major incidents there back in the early 2000s, 2002, was the last major fire that impacted that area. We've learned a lot from then. We've got a lot of different machinery, aircraft, and the way we operate with our partner agencies has changed a lot over the last 19 years as well. So we think we're in a very good place to manage that now.
Our project also spoke to stallholders at the recent Crow's Nest Emergency Services Day. TRC's disaster manager, Jenna Buckley, also spoke to our project on our local council's work relating to Toowoomba's escarpment. We've also heard from many local residents who've shared their stories of bushfire preparation and vulnerability. We've learnt a lot from this project. There is a great deal going on by landholders, council, organisations and local residents. It's clear that our community has a big challenge ahead. Climate change is here, temperatures are rising, drought is increasing, and so is the risk of bushfire. Our community must embrace this challenge.